41 years in prison for making my students eat cupcakes with my husband's semen. Is my sentence deserved? Likes and subscribes. You'll find out how I managed to pull off this madness. I'm Cynthia Perkins, a 35-year-old fat freak who had the brilliant idea of getting my husband to put his semen in the preparation of our cupcakes. Dennis, my man, 44 and just as vicious as me, thought my idea was a good one and went for it. He finished his business in third-party custard and made them special. To spice up their day a little, I told my dear students that the game was to find the secret ingredient. Of course, we thought of our own daughter and saved one of Daddy's cream cupcakes for her. As children fell ill, our little game was not without consequences. Suspicions arose and we found ourselves facing more than 50 charges considered sex crimes. So what did you think? Do you think the sentence is deserved for a simple recipe? I look forward to your comments.
If my mom turned right, I could have been alive today. Unfortunately, she turned left. Hello, my name is James Bulger. I am 2 years old. On the afternoon of the 12th of February 1993, I was in the New Strand shopping center with my mother. My mother went into a butcher's shop, and whilst my mom turned for a few seconds, two boys approached me, took my hand and took me outside with them. My mom ran out of the store looking for me, and she had two options, to either turn left or right. She chose left, which was the opposite way they had taken me. A total of 38 witnesses me being led away by the boys. They listened me crying for my mom and still did nothing. When the boys reached the canal, they picked me up and dropped me on my head, then they left me on the ground crying. A woman happened to be passing by, and she noticed me crying, but she just walked on and did nothing. The boys told me to come, and I was scared, so I followed them. They pulled the hood of my coat over my head to hide the injuries, but some witnesses saw my forehead injury as they passed by, but they didn't think anything of it. A woman even saw me getting punched by them, but she just drew her curtains to block out the sight. I was nearly saved by two women, and one of them contemplated to take me to the police station, but another woman insisted she saw me laughing just a few minutes before. The last woman, who came so close to saving me, saw the boys, and told them that she was going to take me to the police station herself. She turned to a woman who was nearby, and she asked her to look after her daughter while she took me to safety, but she refused. They managed to take me to a deserted railway, and that's where they started hurting me. They threw the blue paint on my eyes, they stamped on me and kicked me. Then they got bricks and threw them on me. They then hit me in the head with an iron bar. I was so badly beaten that they couldn't even determine what the fatal blow was. They even put my lifeless body on the railway and hoped a train would make my death seem like an accident.
After looking more into Ryan's case, detectives realized they'd made a vital mistake.
But as soon as it came on my radar, that was what I realized: we had never gotten DNA from his family.
Detectives quickly gathered new samples from his family and discovered that the bones discovered 4 years earlier were indeed his. This prompted detectives to look deeper into his case, where they realized that he had been hiding a secret from his family that eventually had led him directly to his death.
He had made a post on Craigslist personals, so he was looking for more of someone to take care of him.
Was he interested in transitioning to being a woman?
He started looking into some of it, such as the hormone therapy. He also would go shopping for different female clothing.
Ryan's social media and internet activity revealed that just a few months before his disappearance, he had met someone online by the name of Corey Buzzard. Ryan moved from his home in Kentucky to Corey's house in Ohio alongside two women named Sarah and Naira. Ryan did his best to fit in with the other couple, but found himself often clashing with Naira due to their differing views on who transgender women should portray themselves.
She felt that if you wanted to be a female, you needed to portray yourself as a female and not let anyone else know otherwise.
But for the first month or so, things went fine until in late September, things would start to go drastically wrong for Ryan. Corey broke up with him and told him he had to pack up his things and move out of their shared apartment. Ryan begged Sarah to let him stay, but he was told that he was only there for Corey's purpose and that he needed to leave. But it later turned out that it wasn't that simple. Far from it. The entire time Ryan had been living there, Naira had been developing a fantasy about killing him and decided that his eviction was the perfect time to turn it into a reality. Sarah spent some time talking these through with Naira, originally taking them to be jokes, but allegedly became concerned after she started collecting tools and became more intricate with the plans.
I tried to talk her out of it calmly at first, and then I started getting a little hysterical, and she told me that if I didn't help, that she was going to do it anyway, and that it was going to be a lot messier and a lot harder to get everything done by herself. She said that she would just give me a small role to play, but she would do most of the heavy work.
Sarah goes on to explain that she was extremely concerned but didn't call the police out of love for Naira, and that she would have felt like a horrible person for ratting someone out that had helped her through so much. In her mind, it was better for her to kill Ryan than to break up with Naira, and so she agreed to team up and help her.
She had a rag that she dipped in bleach, and she had a bottle of vinegar next to her. I guess they had some kind of chemical reaction and released some kind of poisonous gas. I don't really know. So when Ryan came out, I jumped on him from behind. Naira came and straddled him and then pressed the rag over his face. When he started making these guttural gasping noises, Naira let me get out from under him. I curled up in the office and cried. I wish that I didn't have to do it, but I was so scared and horrified, but I didn't stop. I didn't stop her.
Sarah and Naira then dumped his body.
Curtain number 1 is correct.
This case made me terrified to go to the cinema. This is the case of the horror in Screen 9. James Holmes was raised in California. His mum was a nurse and his dad was a scientist. From a young age, he was experiencing night terrors and allegedly actually tried to take his own life when he was just 11 years old. He was apparently obsessed with guns and weapons and had dreamed of becoming a mass murderer. Between May and July 2012, he legally bought 4 guns. Background checks were conducted and he was allowed the weapons. He also bought spike strips, which, if you don't know, pop the tyres of cars if they chase after you. On July the 19th, just hours before tragedy would unfold, James mailed his notebook to his psychiatrist. Inside the notebook, James detailed his plans to kill. The notebook was actually discovered later on undelivered. Just prior to entering a cinema in Aurora, James rang a crisis line to tell them about his plans to kill. However, the call was disconnected after just 9 seconds. At the midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises, CCTV captures James walking into the cinema. He walks into screen 9, props open the door, and then walks back out again. Shockingly, he goes to his car and gets guns out and gas canisters. He re-entered the screen at about 12:38 p.m. and set off 2 gas canisters. When he entered screen 9 again, he immediately opens fire on the audience, instantly killing 10 people. 2 others later died in hospital from their injuries. An additional 70 people were injured. This was an absolutely packed out cinema. James also shot at people as they scrambled to exit the screen. His youngest victim was a 6-year-old girl. Witnesses said this all unfolded as there was actually a gunfight on the screen, and initially they all thought it was special effects and just part of the film. Police were actually on the scene very quickly after the first 911 call. James surrendered to the police and was arrested in the car park. He was apparently very calm when he was arrested and told police that he had booby-trapped his apartment. When police investigated his apartment, this was found out to be true. He was sentenced to 12 consecutive life sentences.
This is Albert Fish, the worst pedophile in American history. Oh yeah, and he was also a serial killer and a cannibal. So after torturing and murdering a number of young children, including Frances McDonald pictured right here, Albert Fish needed to escalate even further in his mind. He was allegedly experiencing psychosis, and he would later tell investigators that he was being told by God that he needed to kill and torture these young kids. And this is what leads us to Grace Budd. So initially, the Budd family had placed a wanted ad in the New York City newspapers that claimed that their son, Edward, wanted a position working out in the country. Albert Fish decided that this was another opportunity to grab another victim, so he paid the Budd family a visit. He would claim later on that he intended on mutilating, torturing, and killing Edward Budd, but when he went to the family's home, he was instead greeted by young 10-year-old Grace. So this is just horrible. This is Grace Budd. Albert was good with talking with people, so when he went to the family's home, he talked to the parents and everything, and then he told them that he had to go visit his niece for her birthday party later that day. And he invited young Grace to come along with him, and shockingly, the family said, yes, take her with you. But obviously, there was no birthday party, and Albert Fish took Grace Budd to this eerie old house known as Wisteria Cottage, and it was there where he tortured, murdered, and literally consumed her. So after he was done with Grace Budd, Albert Fish went home, and then he actually wrote a letter to the Budd family describing exactly what he had done to their daughter, and it is one of the most disturbing things that I've ever read in my life. I'm going to post an entire TikTok of the letter. Basically, we did a podcast about this story, and we read the whole letter in its entirety a year or so ago, and let me tell you, it is so disturbing. He talks about consuming the body, exactly how he murdered the young girl. He even talks about a friend that cannibalized young boys in another country earlier in life. It's one of the most disturbing things that you will ever read, but I'm going to post another TikTok with that entire audio in it. But that letter would prove to be Albert Fish's downfall. Now, the police were able to trace that letter. They interviewed people, and they determined that Albert Fish was the person who sent the letter. And so they arrested him, brought him in, and that's what blew this whole case open. After his arrest, they also discovered that Albert Fish had murdered another young boy. On February 11th, 1927, 3 young boys were playing in an apartment complex in Brooklyn, and one of them seemingly vanished into thin air. When they asked the other children what had happened to the other young boy, they replied that the boogeyman had taken them. Through investigation, the police were able to determine that Albert Fish was the one that had killed the young boy. And this was the trial of the century. There's so much that I could go into here that I don't have time for. You can listen to our podcast to find out what happened there. But Albert Fish was unrepentant till the very end. He even told investigators after he received the death penalty that frying in the electric chair would be a supreme thrill. I'm not kidding. It's even said that he helped the executioner secure the electrodes onto his own body. So yeah, he was obviously the worst.
This has to be one of the scariest videos I've ever seen. No ghosts, no spirits, real life. A young female real estate photographer was taking photos for her job one day. She happened to be in an occupied house. The resident began following her around. She says this wasn't unusual, so she didn't think anything of it, until she started noticing multiple locks on certain doors, and even a camera pointed toward one of these doors. When she goes upstairs, a man comes out of one of the rooms. What happens next is straight out of a horror film. You have to see the video for yourself.
Okay, so I took pictures of this house, and this guy was following me around like the whole time, which isn't unusual, but he was a little bit strange, and there was like 6 people living in this house, and it's a hoarder house. But I also noticed they have like 3 locks on the door, and then down here they have locks, and then going up here they have a camera, and it's facing this door. Anyway, a roommate comes out of this door, and he asks them if he should lock the door and kidnap me. And I said, immediately, people know where I am. And then he laughed and said, no one would ever hear from you again. Bro, I did not even finish this house. I immediately left. I was like, nope, dipped the out. You can see me right there. Hello. But yeah, pretty sure I maybe almost got kidnapped, but I don't really know.
If you're a woman and you've ever had any close calls like this, let me know in the comments below. We need to spread awareness that things like this really happen.
I have burned millions of dollars.
No, silly, to dry it. But it exploded, and they were both found dead.
That one day could save your life. If you're buried underneath rubble and are unable to yell for help, grab onto something and tap in intervals of 3. It's more likely that rescuers will notice you because of the unusual pattern. More people are killed by vending machines than shark attacks or plane crashes combined. So if your snack gets stuck, it's not worth it. If you crash into an electrical pole, stay in your car and call 911. It's possible that you downed an electrical wire, meaning the entire area around your car is dangerous. Some women anecdotally reported that breast implants offer protection from knives and sometimes bullets, so scientists at the University of Utah decided to test this. And while they aren't 100% bulletproof, them silicone tatas sure do make an impact. If you're caught in a flash flood, realign your body to where your feet are pointing downstream. This way you'll crash into something with your feet rather than your head. Do not feed honey to a baby under a year old. It could lead to a disease called botulism, and trust me, they do not want that. This doll head from World War II is still alive, but you won't believe the dark reason why. In the 1940s, a Nazi prisoner created a ventriloquist doll called Mr. Fritz. But after the war ended, it was taken back to America, and 79 years later, it was given to a collector named Michael Diamond. Now, while Michael had many disturbing objects in his possession, Mr. Fritz was a little bit different. In September 2019, he noticed that the doll's display cabinet kept opening up every single night. Michael proceeded to set up a GoPro camera, and when he checked the footage, not only was the door opening and closing every night, but the doll's mouth and eyes were moving. And after he saw the video, he locked the display cabinet with metal chains and covered it with a blanket. While some assume that the footage may be edited, others say that the doll is possessed by a demon. This is also the case for this convicted serial killer who tells his psychiatrist that he is possessed by a demon. But things get even creepier when he tells the doctor that he will commit 3 murders of his own. But if you want to hear the rest of the story, check out the movie Nefarious. It just came out in theaters this weekend, and if you guys are a fan of psychological thrillers, you're definitely going to want to